What's up, guys? Brady Figuel here, coming at you with a review of the new Dying Wish album Flesh Stays Together, released just yesterday, Friday, September 26th. This was an album that I was very much looking forward to this year. Their last album, Symptoms of Survival, that came out in late 2023, was my album of the year that year. I fucking loved it. I actually did a favorite albums video on it earlier this year, so if you enjoy this review, you want to hear me nerd out about that record a little bit more, I'll make sure to link it in the suggestion cards. But I guess to kind of sum everything up, that record to me is just everything I look for in modern metalcore. It had the nostalgia factor, as a lot of it could be classified more as, I guess, melodic metalcore. Every song stood out and had its own individual identity. The production on the record was awesome. The album encompassed so many different emotions, from anger to grief to literally everything in between. Just an amazing modern metalcore record. Probably a top 5 for the 2020s so far, I would even say, for me at least. And the debut, before it was solid too, that one takes a little bit more from just that modern hardcore type of sound, which I do think is kind of where this band originates from. But that jump from that debut up until Symptoms of Survival was just huge. It was night and day for me. And just from this record, Dying Wish doesn't seem to be slowing down as far as progressing their sound even further and adding in more elements. Unfortunately, though, I find that on the majority of this record, this experimentation doesn't really pan out well for the band. The biggest and most obvious change with this record compared to their prior two is that the band has gone into way more of a melodic sound overall, as almost every song on here incorporates really prominent clean vocals, and as opposed to several of the tracks on Symptoms of Survival that incorporated clean vocals, these clean choruses in particular really do seem like the intended apex of the song. This stylistic experimentation on here, as far as structure and this overall melodic direction, isn't something I dislike. I always like when bands try and push their sounds in new directions, and I think that in the right context and with the right ideas, it could have still worked. So it's not that I dislike the direction they went in, it's that the execution of it, for me, leaves a lot to be desired. And I'm going to give kind of multiple examples of what I'm talking about as to why overall this album, to me, is a very significant step down from Symptoms of Survival. For one, as far as the clean vocals, and I'm going to be very blunt with this, I don't quite think Emma's vocals are there yet enough to where they command the song and take that prominence when they're produced and mixed so front and center. And just to be clear, one of my favorite elements of Symptoms of Survival was the clean vocals. Vocalist Emma Boster's performance on the clean singing front on songs like Paved in Sorrow, most notably, Path to Your Grave, Torn from Your Silhouette, the clean vocals in those songs sound like absolutely chilling. They're delivered with lots of emotion. They were also produced in a way that made them sound almost a bit distant and cold. They were overall a little bit rough around the edges, which I think was a great fit for the music. Whereas on this record, like I mentioned, they're produced in a way that they are so polished and front and center of the song and the mix. And as a result of that, certain songs on here have moments where on the clean singing front, Emma sounds a little bit strained, like she's kind of pushing herself a little bit too much. Like the lead single, I'll Know You're Not Around, overall is a song that I do like. It builds a good amount of tension, which I enjoy. But I'm sorry, those intro vocals and when they come back in the bridge when Emma's doing the falsetto stuff, they don't sound good. I'm sorry. She sounds audibly strained in these parts, most notably when she says the title of the song, I'll Know You're Not Around, in that bridge section when the music all cuts out and it fades into that breakdown. She sounds, again, audibly strained there. And as a result, those small moments in this song come off a little bit jarring to me. Heaven Departs, the second to last song, and is actually a track that I really like. But in that chorus, again, I feel like she's trying to get a little bit too up there in her vocals, and in the way they're produced, it makes them jump out a lot more in the song. Whereas on Symptoms of Survival, that more rougher on the edges vocal production would have maybe concealed that a little bit more or just made it sound more natural. And kind of going off of that, the clean vocals in general, just from a songwriting fundamental standpoint, they feel like they were pushed a little bit too much on this album. Like I feel like the band was trying a bit too hard to put all these clean vocals into all these tracks. Like literally half of this album, 5 out of the 10 tracks on here, they start the exact same way. Clean guitars, somber sounding clean vocals. There's the abundance of clean choruses on the overwhelming majority of these songs. And there's even a few tracks on here where the clean vocals are there over some screamed parts for absolutely no reason. Like, Revenge and Carnage, the second single, is my absolute least favorite song on this album. I fucking hate it. And one of the most frustrating parts of the song for me is in that chorus when you get these utterly pointless, like, distant, sing-songy clean vocals just slathered on top of those screams in that chorus. They're there for absolutely no reason. And they just sound kind of cringy. The cadences and the melodies that Emma's doing in those distant background vocals, it almost makes it sound like a fucking nursery rhyme. Only hunger to digest. And they do a similar thing on the chorus, I guess, of the song Surrender Everything. Like, I don't understand why the band felt the need to throw on these clean vocals when the song has absolutely no use for them. Like, they don't call for it at all. They're not implied anywhere in the song. There's also the opener, I Don't Belong Anywhere, where, like, instrumentally, it's these hardcore type chugs, but Emma's vocals on here, they sound like they should be on a fucking Pretty Reckless song. I just don't think these combinations work. And another thing is that even on the songs where Emma does execute the clean vocals well, like I think Nothing Like You is a song that does genuinely have some emotion in it, and the clean vocals, her performance delivering them in that lower register sounds a lot better. But even a song like that, the band still can't like fully commit to having a straight up somber emotional track because they have to shove in these heavy parts and these breakdowns. So in a song like this, what ends up happening is the mood ends up being really disjointed, and you can never really identify with the full song. And I'm going to say the same thing about Moments I Regret and about the title track, which is the closer on. All three of these songs do have some genuine nice melodies that I think the band could have built off well, but between the, for one, formulaic nature of all these songs on this album and just the band shoving in these heavy parts that don't really make sense in the song to me, it makes these songs all pretty skippable. It just, to me, sounds like the band was trying a little bit too hard to sound like Evanescence on one hand, but also in the same song, make sure the breakdown's there. You can't have a song without a breakdown, right? Like, the songs on here, they need breakdown. And another thing that bothers me about this album, moving on now from the vocals, what the fuck happened to this band's riffs? All that Swedish Melodeath influence that's really spiced up things on the last record, completely gone. I'm not exaggerating when I say that literally 80% of the rhythm guitar on here is just chugs. The entire time, whether it's the breakdowns, whether it's in these verse sections where maybe they add in a few different notes. Again, Revenge and Carnage, or as Emma likes to say, Revenge in Carnage. The riffing on the song, like, listen to when that main riff first kicks in. Do you guys hear how fucking dull and sluggish and flaccid that sounds? This track is just a mess. Like, I had a little bit of trepidation after I'll Know You're Not Around, the first single. I enjoyed it overall, but it got me worrying a little bit. And then they put this out as the second single, and it really turned me off already. And in the full album context, it doesn't help at all that this track is supposed to be one of the heavy ones. It really brings down the overall energy of this record yet again. Overall, I'm so confused by this album because to me, the band really sounded like they hit a stride with Symptoms of Survival, their last record. And I think they still had a lot of road that they could have driven on before switching up their sound. It's like they had just gotten started and they're already abandoning what made that last album so special. A few other moments that bothered me throughout this record that I will single out, in I Don't Belong Anywhere, the fuck you spoken word call out before the breakdown, although I will admit that breakdown does hit pretty hard. The melodic bridge section in Curse Upon Iron that kind of comes out of nowhere and again just feels a little forced into the song, and as a result it kind of ends up being a bit stark in its transitions like I mentioned earlier. And on the closing title track, I was really rooting for the band that they would let this be the song that ends up going fully for that melodic direction. They just had to tack on that breakdown at the end. But now that I've gotten most of my criticisms out of the way, I will give this album some praise. For one, the double whammy of Empty the Chamber and Heaven Departs near the end of the record is definitely the album's high point. Empty the Chamber, for one, doesn't waste any time with any melodic intros. It just gets right to the heaviness. It's definitely the riffiest song on here, with some really mean-sounding tremolo guitar parts spliced in. At the ending, this breakdown kicks in that has the song shift into more of a triplet feel, and it allows for this really cool transition into making just the song stomp a little bit harder. I enjoyed that. And then Heaven Departs, despite the clean chorus being a little bit iffy for me, is probably my favorite song on here. The melodies in the song are great, and those atmospheric vocals that kind of drive the second half of the song distantly sound really good. And there's also this chug riff that kicks in right at the 2:39 mark that is a great example of like this chugging style being used really well. This is just a really cool, dark song where the mood is pretty consistent the entire time. In this song, the transitions between the heaviness into the melody sound really smooth and natural, which is also a quality that multiple songs on the last record had. Surrender Everything's one of the better tracks on here too. It's a bit genty, which I enjoy, and it just has a bit more energy than some of the other heavy tracks on here. And right at the 2:23 mark in this song, you get this tri-vocalist call-out, similar to like what Knock Loose did on Blinding Faith last year, where you get Emma and then both backing vocalists each taking a turn, and then they all come together for that final send-off into the breakdown. I thought that sounded pretty good. Overall, I do still like I'll Know You're Not Around. It does a really good job of building this tension. The song almost feels like it's suspended in space, in a sense that it never sounds like it wants to satisfy you with this full, impactful, heavy kick in. More, it just sounds like it's implied the whole time and like it's teasing you in a way, and I enjoy that feeling. I also like the kind of more hardcore inspired riffing on A Curse Upon Iron. But guys, aside from that, I'm really not into this album. I'll give it to them that it is produced pretty well. I do wish the vocals weren't as polished, but the drums in particular sound awesome, especially the snare drum. It just sounds so crisp. But to me, it sounds like the band abandoned everything that was so special about that last record, and that's really disappointing to me. The clean vocals are very hit or miss on here. The riffing overall is very dull. The songs are formulaic. Literally half of the album starts off the exact same way with each song. A lot of the tracks, like I mentioned, just feel really disjointing, like they can't fully commit to a certain song, and as a result, the band also kind of sounds like they're having like an identity crisis on here at times. A lot of the breakdowns felt really unnecessary in the more melodic tracks. There's a lot of holes that were really easy for me to poke into this album. They jumped out at me as someone who was such a big fan of their last record. So yeah, this album was a massive letdown for me. It's not terrible, but very, very disappointing and frustrating is the best way I can describe my feelings toward this album. This album gets a 10 out of 30 for me. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to hit the subscribe button for more rock and metal-related content, as well as comment your thoughts on this album below. Please check the description for all of my links, including one to my original music. And yeah, that's about all I got. Once again, thank you guys again so much for watching. And until next time, I will catch you guys later. Peace.